as moderator for tonight's forum. As you know, this is a forum for candidates to the Board of Governors for Pima County Community College. And we have 2 openings this term, and we have 5 candidates, 3 for 1 seat and 2 for another. I have a few announcements to make before we begin. The other co-sponsors besides the League of Women Voters for tonight's event are Las Adelitas Arizona and the Pima County Tucson Women's Commission. So the 3 organizations have planned this and come up with the procedures and developed some prepared questions for the candidates. Before I go into the format for how we'll proceed, I'd just like to ask all of us to pause for a moment in reflection of the September 11th tragedy. So if you don't mind, we'll just do that briefly now. Thank you. I do have some housekeeping things I'd like to bring up right away. First of all, if you have a cell phone on, we'd like you to put it on mute or turn it off. If you need to take a call, just leave the room. There are bathrooms outside this door and right down the hall to your left. Many of you probably already know that we are going to take written questions from the audience. And there are cards and pencils that will be given to you if you raise your hand. One of the people from the sponsoring organizations will get you a card so you can write your question out. Let me suggest you keep the questions as brief as possible, brief and to the point. We have a timer for tonight's forum. Sylvia+Lee of the League of Women Voters, she's up front here, and she has signs that she's going to show the candidates, warning signs, and then a big old stop sign when it's time to stop. So we ask the candidates to honor the time limits here. I was asked to just describe, or to read, I will read, a description from the Pima County Community College website on the purpose of the Board of Governors. I'll just read it, it's 2 short paragraphs. Pima County Community College District is governed by a 5-member board representing Pima County electoral districts. Members are elected to serve a 6-year term. The board determines the mission and sets goals for the college. The board is also responsible for selecting the administrative head of the Pima County Community College District. And that's what we're talking about tonight, people to fill those positions. Let's see, what have I missed here, just to make sure I'm covering everything. Oh, let me cover, we have 3 prepared questions that have been provided by the sponsoring organizations. After each of the candidates makes an opening statement, those will be at 3 minutes each. We will be going alphabetically, and we'll start at the far end of the table here. When we have closing statements toward the end of the forum, we'll reverse the order and start over here with Mr. Said. After we do the prepared questions, we'll take the questions from the audience. And those questions each candidate will have a chance to respond with 90 seconds each. Closing statements will be 2 minutes each. Are there any questions from the candidates? Is it all pretty clear right now? And with that, yes, I surely. The microphone's popping. Is this better? I'll do my best. Well, let us proceed then with opening statements, and we'll start with Marty Cortez. Thank you, Marty.
Good evening, and thank you for being here, taking your time. I want to let you know that the reason I serve on the Pima College Board of Governors is because I passionately believe in education. I was a school teacher for 14 years and a school principal for 17. I'm still very involved in education at the university also. My priorities for service on the Pima College Board are to provide access to quality education for all, to provide programs and resources for student success, to make data-based decisions, to provide responsible financial management, to provide lifelong learning opportunities for all ages, to enhance avenues for community input and to provide employees a safe and respectful workplace. Some of the improvements over the years during the time I've served on the board include, but not total, the incorporation of the use of a strategic plan, setting goals over multiple years that guides the college towards continuous improvement. Expanded class and program access for students so that they can take classes in the evenings and weekends. So if a student needs to complete their program on an evening schedule, they can do so. Pima set a record this past May in graduating 3,624 students, 7,000 of which were workforce and business development students. We have centralized the student services at all the campuses, so students do not have to go to different parts of the building in order to get the information that they need, and that's been a great help. We have partnerships now with the universities across the nation, 14 in all, including Eastern New Mexico, ASU, of course, NAU, in agreements with the U of A. So the students can continue and get their bachelor's degree after they finish at Pima. We've enhanced professional development training. Not many people know this, but Pima is a pilot for a community college, community colleges for the voluntary framework of accountability for the first national accountability system for community colleges, which provides meaningful measures using consistent definitions and seeks to provide information on student progress and success. And we're anxious to get that data from that program. During these difficult economic years, the college has saved $52 million without layoffs or furloughs or cuts in benefits to our employees. Pima has been on a building trajectory for many, many years, and I'm proud to have been a part of that. Let's not forget that Pima College picked up the GED program when the state dropped it. And we've also added a program for vets, and we're very proud of our vet center here at the downtown campus. We have the largest enrollment of vets of any college in Arizona.
Thank you. Richard Fredina.
As she just said, my name is Richard Fredina. I'm running for the seat that's currently occupied by the incumbent here. I'm motivated by looking at Pima College and being concerned about the direction it's headed. What I read in the newspapers is not heartening. It does not encourage me about what is happening at Pima College. What it indicates is there's a failure in governance, not necessarily the academic programs where the faculty and the students are involved, the line staff, and the line administrators, but governance. When governance fails, ill will is generated for the college. Recently, we've seen issues arise concerning sexual harassment not being investigated, procurement issues in terms of single-party contracts being let out to people that are close to the administration. We've had issues around open meetings laws. The board's been sanctioned recently about being too secretive in its agenda, and that needs to be opened up. And lastly, there's a hostile work environment. Now, many of you maybe can remember in the paper, there was a discussion about a consultant that was hired by Pima College called Mr. Cernocrack. And what he was hired to do, and it was what the paper made an issue of is that he may have been a childhood chum of the former chancellor. But as I reflected upon this, there's another aspect that we didn't examine. And that's the fact that this guy was hired to provide leadership to the top management that the chancellor kept firing, that he kept pushing out, that he kept creating conditions for a hostile work environment where people resigned and left at the first chance they got. There was an over 100% turnover rate in the top administrators of the college while the former chancellor was here. Now, the board should have said something's wrong, but instead what we heard from the board was, he's a tough leader. He makes people jump. And yeah, they're jumping ship. I think that the board engaged in a process in these 4 areas of governance by delegation. And what they did is they delegated the responsibility to staff. When we talk about open admissions, which will be the first question, I'll talk more about how the board delegated its responsibilities and abrogated its responsibilities to us, the students, and members of Pima County. Thanks.
Thank you. Now we'll hear from Sylvia+Lee.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank all of you in the audience, because obviously this room is full, and this tells us here, us candidates, that this is important not just to us, but to many of you in the community, and thank you for taking your time. I would like to, just before I get into really what is my position, I want to tell you a little bit about myself, because then you've got decisions to make on who to vote for, and I want you to know who I am. First of all, I'm a native Tucsonan. Born and raised here, went to Catalina High School, Doolin Junior High, and Craigin Elementary. I am an only child of a single parent who came across after World War II from the Philippines and immigrated to the U.S. With her family. I'd like my mother and my uncle to stand up. Well, okay, they're sitting down. They're my mother's going to be 90 years old in September. So, and I want to say that why is this important? Well, it's important you know that how I grew up. Work ethic, hard work, and education was #1. And so I grew up always knowing that I was going to go to college, and at the time, in the 60s, the Pima wasn't here. It started, as you know, in the late 60s, and by the time I graduated from high school, Pima had just been around a few years, and so I didn't know, none of us really knew a lot about it. I went straight from Catalina High School to the U of A, thinking, okay, I'm gonna, you know, be a college-educated kid, and I bombed out, like many students. I wasn't prepared. So I thought I was going to have to go into the workforce, and I wasn't college material. Told my mother, told my family, and my cousin had great success at Pima College, and he told me, you should give it a try. Pima's just been around a short while, but it's a great school. So I went to Pima, and I will tell you, it's because of the excellent instructors, the faculty that took the time to teach, and the wonderful individual staff that helped me find my way, that I was able to graduate, go on to get my bachelor's, my master's from U of A, and my doctorate in higher ed from ASU. And I have 30 plus years in higher education, 4 community colleges and 2 universities. My philosophy and why I came here as a candidate is because I worked at Pima for 15 years. I was a student here. I love Pima, and I believe in it, and I think that we were taking the wrong path. I'd like your vote to try and get on this board to restore our pride and our respect and our quality. The quality of education has never changed, but I know the climate has, and so I hope you will support me.
Thank you. The next candidate is Vicki Marshall. This is site.
I would like to thank the League of Women, first off, for inviting me, and you guys for being here. I am not a politician. I am not an administrator. I am a classroom teacher, pure and simple. And that is where my focus will be. Student accessibility to the college, student financial aid, student work-study programs. We are a democracy. And what I will do and have been doing for the past couple months, riding around the 5th District on my bicycle, is talking to the registered voters, putting out my platform, unvarnished platform, views of Pima College, and the voters in the 5th District will decide. And that's exactly what I'm going to do here tonight. I will touch on some of those issues now, and if the ones I don't finish discussing with you, I will I'll talk to you in my closing statement. Pima College, in my view, is administratively top-heavy. There are too many administrators making too much money. of the 52 administrators listed on the Pima website, Pima College is paying $5.6 million, or an average salary of over $100,000 per administrator. That needs to change. I've been doing some detailed analysis of the budget. For fiscal year, let me start with the general fund for fiscal year 708. The budget was about $142 million. For fiscal year 12-13, the budget is about $167 million. There has been a reduction in student services, an unconscionable reduction in scholarships, less than 1% of $166 million, and an increase in administrative costs. That is likewise reflected in the restricted fund. A decline in academic support, a decline in student services over those 2 fiscal years. That needs to change. And I will do my best if I'm elected to the board to do that. Of the $93 million that is collected from property taxes, most of that goes to administrative support, regular faculty support, and again, unfortunately, 0% for scholarships.
Thank you. On to the first prepared question. And we'll start with Mr. Ferdina, and we'll stagger the responses so each person has a chance to answer a question first. The first prepared question: what is your position on Pima Community College's new admission standards? You have 3 minutes for this.
The question is difficult because it's difficult to understand what the admission standards are. We know that last March, a year ago March, the board didn't act, but the administration acted to close the open admissions policy in Pima by instituting another set of criteria for admissions to Pima. They converted what were assessment placement exams into an admissions exam. And there's been ample evidence that that's a wrong-headed thing to do. You're using an apple when you should be using an orange. You do use assessments to judge whether somebody's acceptable for schooling. The board was then pushed into holding open forums, but they decided to hold the forums during the daytime from 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. And so a group of us had to push again to get them into some irregular hours. Now, that'll become important when we look at the chancellor selection process, because they've done the same thing again. And so the board wasn't very open to hearing what was to be said. They had 5 forums, and they said at the beginning, we're doing this, we're closing admission because it's a financial reason. That was the first one. The second reason they said, no, it's not financial. It's because remediation isn't working. And then they started on this drum that's been in the public, and you saw it in the paper today, that 7th graders can get into Pima College, people with a 7th grade or less education. Well, they started this program called Pima Prep. What that was to do is, it was to take people that needed remediation that they canceled and put them in a new computerized program. Pima will tell you, and you'll probably hear it from the board member, that everybody's admitted to Pima. And they do that by admitting you, by having you fill out an application, and they give you a student form. It doesn't mean you can take classes. It doesn't mean you can get student insurance. It doesn't mean you can get a loan. It means that you're admitted. In the Pima program, they've had 9,103 people that were admitted to the program. 7 people had to be referred to adult education. That's 0.08%. So when you hear that 7th grade education as a criterion, it's just bogus. It's like looking for voter fraud. It just doesn't exist. 67% of the people of this 9,000 or 6,000 people apparently have walked away to Pima. Pima has no idea what happened to them when they were suddenly hit with this assessment before they could go on.
Thank you. Are you finished then? All right. Now we turn to Sylvia+Lee for your response. 3 minutes, please.
Thank you. Well, like many of you, last week I was glued to the Democratic National Convention. I wanted to see what's happening across the country, and community colleges were mentioned by our president. But something that really struck me is that two individuals, Michelle Obama said, a fair chance at that great American dream. Everybody deserves a fair chance at that great American dream. And then Julian Castro, who was the keynote, the mayor of San Antonio, said, invest in people and you invest in shared prosperity. Invest in people and you invest in shared prosperity. And that's what I believe open enrollment is, or open admissions, as many would like to call it. Open enrollment, open admissions.
Put yours on here.
And I will mention that in the United States there are about 1,200 community colleges. And there is an association that governs the community colleges called the American Association of Community Colleges. So I wanted to know, because when this admissions change happened, I was very upset about it. And many of you know me. I was a president. I was a sitting president at Pima, and I was also a dean of students and a dean of instruction. And I, again, told you my personal story on how important Pima was to me. So I went to the American Association of Community Colleges, and I asked them, how many community colleges in the country have closed admissions or are not open to the general public to just come in as they wish at whatever point they are? And actually I have it. There are 24 community colleges that have a restricted admission that require a test, and Pima now is one of those, and that's 2% of the community colleges in the country, 2%. So I wanted to better understand, what does this mean for Pima County? Because many times I've been portrayed as, oh, she's a bleeding heart liberal, she just wants to let everyone in regardless, because what I've heard through data that the colleges put out, they're not successful and they won't be. Well, I will tell you that I looked at the data before the website was changed, and there was 8 years worth of data. And I will tell you that I saw success. What I saw is, that's also very disturbing, is that about 70% of the individuals in the lowest level, Dev Ed, are minority students. And what does this mean? This means that Pima is the economic engine of our county, and everyone who wants an education deserves to come in. Does that mean it's an open door? Yes. Does that mean that there's got to be standards? Yes, absolutely. Stop there.
And I went out there personally with the information and presented it. And Richard was...
Pima College is open to all, no matter what your level is. We do meet the needs of varied programs of people of all ages. But let me clarify a few things. When we had our accreditation review, I think it was in 2009, the one thing that we were cited on, everything else was great, and these folks were there at the college, was that our remedial education was not doing what it potentially should and could be doing. We needed to change that. That was a recommendation from accreditation. So then the committee of faculty was formed, and faculty got together and have been working on it for almost 2 years with recommendations of how to change the remedial education. The result was the recommendations that was brought out to the public and to the rest of the college. So it was no surprise that this work was going on and changes were going to be made to remedial education. The other factor is that in the state legislature in May of 2007, the admission to community colleges in the state of Arizona was changed to be you either had to have a GED, a high school diploma, or demonstrate potential to benefit, which means somehow you have to find out where the students are in their abilities. Another change happened that affects students, especially those that were spending financial aid in remedial education, and that was at the federal level. Federal level regulations for financial aid says a high school diploma or GED required. The Pell eligibility dropped also from 18 semesters to 12 semesters. So if students were spending part of their Pell grants in remedial education, and then on those semesters in remedial education, they may not have had enough money to continue their education and finish out if they went on to a 4-year degree. The income threshold also rose from $24,000 to $30,000. So those changes were made at the state and the national level that affects our students. What we are trying to do in changing remedial education is to provide better opportunity so the students can advance at their own pace. I ran into a student as I was getting petition signatures saying that he was at Pima College, because I always asked where they go to school or had they associated with Pima College. And he says, yes, I'm at Pima College now, and I am in the Prep Academy, and it's working great for me.
Thank you. The second prepared question is this: how do you perceive the relationship of Pima College and the general public? Now, for this question, we ask you to stay within 2 minutes for your response, and we'll start with we'll start with Sylvia+Lee.
Can you please repeat that
Of
question?
course. How do you perceive the relationship of Pima College and the general public?
Well, I will say that in the 15 years that I was at Pima prior to the last administration, I would say that the general public had an incredibly favorable response. And I think even now, the general public, I would hope, understands that Pima is the primary economic engine in this community. Absolutely. Without Pima College, you talk about economic development. Without us, there would be extreme poverty. And what I would like to mention is that there's been a number of programs that have been under the last administration that I really think really hurt the college. Not only did the open admission situation and the fact that the community really was not consulted and it happened pretty much overnight. But for example, the child care centers. We had 3 child care centers that we put at least $1 million to renovate, and overnight those child care centers were taken off of the, as far as they were closed. They had a few months to close. We had a program called the Women in Progress program, or Progress, that helped many displaced individuals that were, many of them women, to get to Pima and to succeed. We had a summer bridge program for a high school student who wanted to come to us and they needed remediation before they started their freshman year. There are a number of programs that have been eliminated, and so I do believe that the community, thanks to the paper, is seeing that many of these things are happening, and that unfortunately it hasn't been transparent to the community. I hope to make that change so it is transparent.
Thank you. And now we'll move to Vicki Marshall.
Thank you. I agree with what Sylvia said.
Pima College is a big institution, and we have various programs, and we do have advisory boards that meet with the various programs to advise them on the latest or the changes or the kinds of things that they need to have their workers trained in. So there's communication with the community. We can enhance that, surely, and we look forward to doing that. But Pima College has always been an open place for people to come and ask questions, express their ideas, and help us address the needs of the college. One of the things that I remember that somebody approaching me about was the fact that those that have been in prison, of course, can't hold certain certifications or licenses. And at the college, our advisors and our counselors were not well informed about those particular licenses and certifications. And so I brought that to the board and to the chancellor, and we made that change and had some in-service so that our advisors and counselors were serving our students better. Those that have been in prison then could get the correct information and not start programs that they could not complete because of licensing. Our child care center, that was an issue that came up several years before, and I don't remember if you were on the board then or not, but it had been an issue before. The child care centers were instituted to help address the child care needs for our students. What ended up happening was that we did not have the enrollment from our students. They were coming from outside of the community. So they were not serving the purpose for which they were designed, and they were also financially taking money from other programs.
Thank you. Richard Fredina.
This question reminds me of the thread your mother tells you not to pull on your shirt, because everything's going to unravel. It's so multidimensional when we talk about the public. I mean, which public are we talking about? I would imagine that if you talk to active students, they're going to tell you how wonderful their teachers are, for the most part. If you talk to adjunct faculty members, in that public, they're going to tell you about what a bug deal they're getting at Pima College, about how they can't survive, the wages are low, and the work is hard. If you talk to business people, some of them have no idea what's going on at Pima College. We have community advisory committees for the vocational programs, but they're rarely utilized by the college. The board has totally ignored them. I spent 30 years at Pima College as an instructor, as a department chair, as an administrator, and no information. You'd send the information forward and the board would not know about it. What we've got again is this idea of the ill will, and where's the ill will that's coming towards Pima? It's coming from the lack of good governance. The board role should be asking, who should the college be serving and how can we best serve those students? But what they do instead is they've closed admissions to make it more difficult for your family members and friends to attend the college. They've instituted a differential tuition based on what your projected earnings might be after you leave the college so that you pay more for classes. Things that need to be discussed with the public, with the students, with the faculty before they're implemented. But this board goes ahead, implements a program, and tells you everything is fine.
Thank you. Now for the third prepared question. This one I'll read, and I'll read it again if anyone needs it. Pima Community College has had some negative press for various reasons during the last year. What will you do as a board member to move the college forward? And this question will start with Vicki Marshall.
I'd like to say, since my time on the board, which has been long, in 1995, I would say that Pima College has done well and it's built and has communicated with the community, and it's been a great relationship, and we have served our community well. Yes, we've run into some problems here this past year. It's been rough. Not in any institution this size, it doesn't run into some difficulty. But I don't want to dwell on what was and what should have done or could have done. We've learned some lessons, yes. Unfortunately, some of the things that have been stated here tonight are not exactly what has happened. But anyway, I'm not into looking back and chastising people or programs. I am about resolving the problems and moving forward. Unfortunately, we can continue to send good positive things too that happen at the college, like the day we had our presentation at the board meeting about all the different ways the college saved $52 million, and that was sent to the press, but it never was published. So we have right now, I guess, maybe a little bit of an imbalance of what's getting reported in the news media. Unfortunately, bad news sells newspapers. Good news doesn't sell very well. But I am proud to say that our programs are strong, our staff doing a great job, our students are getting good education, as evidenced by the large graduating class that we had, And we are continually, that's why our strategic plan is there, because we are continually looking to how to improve our programs every year, every time. Our programs are reviewed on a 5-year basis, evaluated, and changes are made where they need to be changes. Yes, some programs are closed if they're no longer viable, and new ones are opened if that's what's needed to serve our community. We will continue to do that. And we invite your input at any time. Pima College's door has never been closed.
Thank you. Mr. Ferdinand.
I have to pull that thread a little bit further. If we look at what the board's done, then the charges in the newspaper, I don't necessarily see them as negative. I think openness, transparency, the light of day gets rid of cronyism and corruption. And so I see it as a good point for the college to be at. However, this board has not dealt with the public charges of sexual harassment that have occurred. They have not dealt with the procurement issues. They have not dealt with the hostile work environment. And I would call for an external review, an independent agency to look at Pima College to clear it. Now, Marty and I were on a radio show a few weeks ago, and she said, much to my surprise when I called for this review, that the Attorney General's office had looked at Pima College and they cleared Pima College. So I went home and called the Attorney General's office, and I said, what's up with this? And they said, we haven't cleared Pima College, we've just decided not to make an investigation at this time. We need an external review to come in and clear Pima College of these charges that are hanging over the head so that we can rebuild the trust and confidence in our college. And I think I can do that because I'll be willing to speak up and confront the issues and the hypocrisy and the cronyism when I see it occur in the college rather than having to read about it in the newspaper.
Thank you. Sylvia+Lee.
Well, I think I will say that I am very, very grateful that what's been in the paper has finally come out, because I think that all along, if the paper had been looking at, and if the college had been transparent and accountable, none of this would have mattered. Because from my point of view, if I'm a board member, come on in. If you want to see something, what's to hide? Why not come in? We need to make it transparent. Obviously, the things that are personnel issues and lawsuits or whatever, those are private. But everything should be transparent if the public wants to see it. If the faculty and staff want to see it, because we are a public institution supported by the public dollars. That's number one. So because the press is finally looking at the college and magnifying some of the issues, these are not new issues. It didn't happen overnight. Okay, it's been going on for a long time. Many of you out there understand that. It's been going on a long time. And it's not only what you have seen in the papers, it's other things that are behind the scenes that are happening that I think also needs to be transparent. So, what's going to take care of the negative press? New leadership on the board. My incumbent has had 12 years to try and take care of it. And I would like your shot at your vote and giving it a chance for the next 6. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're coming to the audience questions, and we have a great number of cards. Appreciate your doing that. We have 2 people from the steering committee that organized the forum looking at the cards and grouping them together so that we can ask a question about a topic, and we're just choosing one, in this case, undocumented immigrants. And we will start with you, Mr. Said, for this question, and here it is. That undocumented immigrants granted deferred action status should be able to attend Arizona schools by paying in-state tuition rates. Do you agree or disagree with this statement? And what are your reasons, or why?
Being that I believe in education, you educate people and the boat rises for everyone, for the whole community. And I think people that have the tenacity and ambition to better their lives and go to school should be given that opportunity. They're not asking for a free ride, they're asking for a chance. So they will pay tuition and come to school and work hard. I think that benefits our community. The immigration question, of course, needs to be settled at the federal level. Until it has been settled, I think the members of our community that are undocumented ought to be able to go to school at the rate of in-state tuition.
Thank you. Mr. Ferdina?
Well, I'll boil it down even a little further. I think if you're a resident of Pima County, you should be able to go to Pima College at Pima County rates. If you're not a resident of the county and you're out of county, there's an out-of-county tuition charge. There's even an out-of-state tuition charge, but that's kind of a non sequitur for Pima because not a lot of people come from out of state to go to the community college like they do for the university. There's a question on the application that asks, are you a U.S. citizen? And you check yes or no. That's added up and reported to the state. So I don't see what the issue with this question is. I fully support, if you're a resident of Pima County, come to Pima College, pay Pima rates.
Thank you. Sylvia+Lee?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that, and Greg Hart can tell me the name of the bill, but I think it was about 6 years ago, there was a new law passed that now we have to ask on the admissions application. And so adult education at its high had 12,000 students. When that law was implemented, it went down to about 8,000. So what happened to those students? Well, they went away without the opportunity to learn English, to learn reading, writing, mathematics, and then go on to Pima Community College credit courses. So am I in favor of it? Absolutely, because again, the DREAM Act, bottom line is, and you heard, if you listened to the Democratic Convention, a lot of these kids, and they came across the border when they were babies. Many of them, again, at no fault of their own, came across. Now, are we going to say you cannot get an education? Okay, well, and then what I'd like to say is that this is what happens, because literacy in our prison system right now is 40% of the Arizona Department of Corrections has less than a 6th grade level in reading and writing. You have to educate. We have to educate. Pima College has to educate. The bottom line is, again, remember what I said at the very beginning, invest in people for the collective benefit. It's invest in, and it becomes shared prosperity.
Thank you. Vicki Marshall.
Would I be cheating?
Should Pima Community College's priority be to focus on providing 1, a higher education certificate or an associate degree, or 2, or education for anyone at any level? Please clearly choose one.
I can't choose one because Pima College addresses both. We have educational opportunities for those that are pursuing a bachelor's degree, so we have transfer programs for our students, as all community colleges do. We do specialized training for businesses in order to help them with their pursuits. We have certificate programs that are not accredited classes, but are directly for workforce jobs. So to choose one or the other is to deny what Pima College is all about. Pima College is to provide wide access to education for various needs, and that's what Pima College is doing. So I don't understand the choice.
Thank you. Mr. Ferdinand.
Well, I have to agree with this question, with Marty on this question as well. So we've got 2 questions we agree on so far. A community college has basically, a comprehensive community college has vocational classes, has transfer classes, special interest classes, it has workforce development classes, and remedial classes. Now, all of those serve different goals. And do we want to start really thinking of our education system only as a certificate-producing institution? Is that the goal, so that what we do is we're going to start funding based on how many people graduate So then what we can do is we can create a bunch of diploma mills. Pima has been in the past, until this admission change occurred, was a drop-in institution. And what that meant is if you had a need as a member of our community, you came to Pima to see if there was education that you needed. And you took a class, or you took 2 classes, and then we didn't see you again. Until the next time you wanted to come back for training, or more information, or you had a special interest. And so I think we shouldn't lose what education is about, and that we should shy away from the idea of making it only a certificate or a vocationally oriented institution, to embracing the idea that education is a liberating and radical experience.
Thank you. Sylvia+Lee?
Okay, from my point of view, I believe that the choice is really educating an individual at any level. Because at any level, they may decide they want to be like me and come into Pima after flunking out at the university and go on and get a doctorate. So, you know, if that's your choice and if that's your destiny and you work hard, why shouldn't we let you in? But here's my key, it's choices. Not everybody is going to come in college ready. Not everybody is going to come in at the lowest level. So I believe that if we had multiple choices for entry points, where students, whatever their decisions were, to come in. So for example, the Prep Academy. That would be considered a best practice if it wasn't the only choice, as it is right now. Right now, students, if they want to take a credit class that is the lowest level, those classes, for the most part, are gone. And I would like to just say, at that 8-year study, that 74% of the people in the lowest level writing were minority students. In math, in the lowest level math, 65% were minorities and 84% were minorities in reading. Bottom line is, it comes back to open access. Not everybody can go in and take the Prep Academy. Some students may need the full semester and they need the financial aid.
Thank you. Mr. Saita, for Dina this time, right? No, well, I've got a chart here. So trust me until I make a mistake and then call me out. All right. The present board has developed a don't ask, don't tell attitude about the chancellor's role. How will this change if you are elected or re-elected?
Well, the chancellor's role is the person who oversees the academic and the business functions of the college. He's the person that makes the business of running a college work. The board's role is one of saying, what is the work of the college? Who are we going to serve in our community? Who are we going to exclude? Where are we going to put our resources? How will the resources benefit the college? What's happened with this current board is it sort of fell asleep on asking those kinds of questions. And it let the former chancellor, in my opinion, run the show and tell the board what's going on. You can see this in the deadliness of a board meeting, if you ever go to one. It's one of the most boring meetings I've ever been into in my life. This is more exciting than a board meeting. What they do is they listen to reports on meetings. And then the chancellor gets up and gives this report on some service that's going on. There's no discussion about what are the priorities of Pima County. How do we serve our students better? Are our students actually being better? What measures are we going to have? I think that both the chancellor and the board need a 360-degree evaluation system so that the constituents they serve can input directly in them and help them be more effective.
Thank you. Ms. Lee?
His recommendations after going through all of the applications very carefully and gathering their information and making their recommendations to the board. The final candidates are normally brought, as in the past, to the campus. Again, the interviews are open and anyone can attend. to get their own perspective of the final candidates. So that is in process now. That it takes a while to do these chancellor searches, and it will be an open process. There's going to be 25 to 30 people on the advisory committee, and that will be determined shortly. But there's not a board member on our board presently that is trying to be secretive or has any ulterior motive for serving on the board. We don't always agree, we don't always vote the same, but that's the makeup of the board. We represent the community. We don't represent the internal structure, we represent the community.
Thank you. Okay, the next question is one of several that have to do with morale within Pima College, among the administrators, the faculty, and so forth. So I read the question, and the first to respond in this case will be Sylvia+Lee. The media recently reported the existence of extremely low morale among college faculty and staff, quoting and naming individuals and giving their opinions. What will you do to make sure morale improves?
Well, we have a fantastic opportunity in hiring a new leader. A leader that, number one, respects employees, respects other differing opinions, and is a collaborator and a partner, and an innovator. So we have an opportunity that comes around. Well, it's been 10 years.
When Mr. Syeda says that if anybody engages in a particular kind of behavior, they are history, that's the same process that we're talking about that occurred at Pima College, that we're trying to get away from. That's intimidating. It shows that he lacks an understanding of...
Sir, your comments are ad hominem.
Excuse me. Let him finish.
You bet it is. It shows that he doesn't understand the role of the board in micromanaging versus the role of the board in setting policy direction. It's interesting that the former chancellor's being defended at this point, but we've not heard anything about what happened. There's been no release. If he's been cleared of charges, well, why don't we hear about it? What happened is the board hired the wife of the college's attorney to investigate charges against the chancellor, and that to me starts not looking right. You know, I'm not an expert on all this, but it seems like somebody independent needed to look at this and say there's substance here and there's charges that need to be pursued, or there's not. I think dealing with that issue would help morale. I think opening the board meetings up to a little bit more looser where people can participate, because I can remember a time when I was representative to the board, they were going to buy land at Desert Vista, and I raised my hand and talked about how I just seen this presentation and how expensive this land would be, and it helped the college make a better decision.
Please stop. Thank you. Okay, I think that completes the people who were responding to that particular question.
Can I respond to his
I'm sorry, we don't have time for that. We didn't anticipate that. We have several, I'll just point out that the question that was actually asked was, what will you do to make sure that morale improves on the campus? And I think we got a little off track, but let's move on to another question. There are several people who have questions about ethnic studies, about how we would work with local tribes to meet the unique needs of their constituents, their questions along those lines. I'm going to choose one to ask, and then if you want to address anything in general about ethnic studies at Pima College, that's appropriate. And for this question, we'll start with Vicki Marshall.
The most rewarding experiences that I had at Pima College was before the Tohono O'odham Community College was established. For 6 years, I would drive every Friday out to Sells and teach social services, which was my area. And I got my whole department involved in it. And now, one of our graduates is head of the Tohono O'odham tribe, Ned Norris. And it's very, with a lot of pride, that I say that. I think that the whole idea of ethnic studies, for the college, we need to step back and look at who are we hiring. In my time at the college, what I saw is an increasing whitening of the faculty and the staff. Pima College, when it was originally started, used to have beige stationery because it embraced ethnicity rather than using white paper. But it's true. Its colors were orange and brown because it embraced ethnicity. And I embrace that in ethnicity, and I think we need to look at our hiring practices because the pipeline's been choked off about minorities getting into higher education. And where we open that pipeline is at the community college. That's why we need to reopen and relook at admissions, remedial education, and take a new direction in our hiring. The State Community College Board, it disappeared from the state level. They erased a whole bunch of laws. At the same time that that happened, the state law changed the community college governing board term from 4 years to 6 years. So we're talking about a 12-year span now. What I think we have to do is we have to look at the individual board member to decide, do we term limit them by voting them out, or do we extend them? It seems to me, just in watching boards in general, that when people have been on boards for an exceedingly long time, they start to slack off a little bit. They're not as attentive to the details. They know the place. They know how things